In part 2 here, I just want to do a brief introduction to with dimensioning. Just showing quickly how to add dimensions. We're not going to cover all the rules of dimensioning. I just want you guys to be able to put some dimensions on the paper and use some basic guidelines, and that's as far as we really get with the multi-view drawings for puzzle cubes. So here's where we left off. We had the drawing, we changed our page size in the title block, and what we need to do now is add text. And what we refer to as text here is called an annotation. So we go up to the tab for annotate, and we get our whole new set of ribbon commands. The first one, of course, is dimension, the one we want. There's lots of other ones we will use later, but again, for now, we start on that left side. So we activate dimension command, and there are two ways to add a dimension. If I want the entire length of this base line, as long as I do not click a green dot, don't ever click a green dot in dimensioning. So if we want this whole line, I can choose just to click that line and then bring my dimension down. I click one more time, and at this point I just hit OK. That's one way to add a dimension. Another way to add dimensions, let me hit the escape key. Another way to add a dimension, I'm going to zoom in and show you, you activate the command. If, let's say, I wanted the width from this vertical edge over to the left side, if for some reason that was a dimension I want, I do not currently have a straight edge to get me there, like I did at the bottom. What I would do instead is find two parallel lines. So in this case, I would click the right side edge for one. I would just continue moving the mouse over. Then I click the left side edge. And now when I bring my mouse back over and up, that is the other way of getting a dimension. So if you have a full straight line, that's great. If you don't, just pick two lines parallel in the distance you want. Come up out of the part, click again, choose OK, and you're done with that dimension. So that's the mechanics of it. That's how you create dimensions. So I'm going to undo those. What I want for sure in the dimensioning of your puzzle pieces are two things. Number one, I want the overall height, width, and depth dimensions for every single part. Those should be in the front view. So I should be able to get the overall width of my part. So here's my overall width. I'll put that here. I also want the overall height of my part. So I can get that here. The depth, however, I can't see in my front view. So I'm going to choose either the top or side view. And I'll just choose the top view. So the top view, I will choose the other method here. So I'm going to choose the front edge, then the back edge, again, never using a green dot. Then I have my 0.75. I'll come out here and add that. So I have all dimensions for the overall height, overall width, and overall depth. The other thing I need you to do is add any other necessary dimensions to allow me to look at your part without knowing anything about it. I look at this piece of paper, and I can then create this puzzle cube piece with the dimensions you're given. So for example, I know the overall dimensions, but I don't know yet how wide any of these steps are. So I might come in here and add the dimension of this piece. Okay. Now that's fine, but I still can't figure out, technically, I will never ever assume a dimension to be symmetric. So I will not assume that these are also 0.75. What I'll do is instead maybe add those dimensions this way. What I can do is take 2.25 minus this. That I can do. That's math. That's not assuming. The same thing goes for the height. I'm not going to assume that the height is the same as the width. So I'll come out here and add the height of the first step, second step, and again, I don't need the top one because I can do the math of the overall height minus these two pieces. With that said, I've got my height for step 1, step 2, I can figure out 3. the width of step 1, width of step 2, and can figure out 3. I believe I have every dimension necessary. At this point, I can fully make this part having come in with no knowledge. So I will leave that as the expectations for this activity. As far as dimensioning goes, overall height, width, depth, and then any internal smaller features that I may need. If I chose, I guess there's one thing, if I were to make these dimensions come out of the same side, so for example, I would not ever do this, but if I needed to put this dimension on the right hand side, I would not want the bigger dimension first. So for example, I would never want you to do this where your smaller dimensions are outside of or further away from the part than the big ones. Okay. If I were to demonstrate that properly, I would make my small dimensions first. And then I would make my furthest dimension. It adds a lot of cleanliness. You should never have these lines cross each other. So the couple rules there, overall height, width, depth, and make sure that you do not cross dimension lines from a smaller dimension to a bigger one. Okay, so we don't want to do that. Okay, so actually, it needs to come over there. So this is a fully dimensioned part. I would hit Control S again, make sure that that part got saved, and then I would move on to my next part.